for this next movie that we need to cover because we're still on this goofy trade. Emilia Perez came out this weekend, and people realized festival audiences and regular audiences are very different.
Yeah.
And then I also realized, because we've already covered this movie, this is going to be more of an after talk about Emilia and the reactions that it's had, that a lot of people love to do this thing on Twitter. So let's just start the movie, but not even talking about the movie, Zach. I've seen this new bit where people will go to the rating and just put their friends and then share it to act like that's the actual rating of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll argue with other people about the stuff they like and say the word echo chamber as if they just didn't tweet the other day. This, bro, I saw everybody's things and I went, oh my gosh, this movie's tanking now that it's out. I go and I check. I'm like, bro, it's at 3. They're like, no, it's not. And people will change their ratings to just be their friends as if, like, you don't pick who you follow, so you do decide it. I hate saying film Twitter likes to, but, like, bro, film Twitter, what are y'all? Oh, my G. What are you? We can't even talk about the movie if we're already lying about the rating system. You can't just follow people and change the rating system. I don't get to follow 5 accounts that liked If and see, Zach, people do love it.
People hate this more than any other movie. Any other movie.
But if a red one. Yes, what I thought.
Oh,
come on. Say it on the podcast.
Red one? I'm just going to piss you off and say red one.
You're so full of it. You're so full of it.
I forgot what movie If was for a second.
If. Sexiest Man of the Year.
I was like, It the Clown? No.
No. Bro, imagine getting Sexiest Man of the Year. It was just your ifs voting for you. Like, how does that happen, bro? Emilia Perez has divided audiences depending on who you ask and depending on if they just want to divide themselves into whatever it is. It is a musical that is out on Netflix that premiered, if I'm not mistaken, at Cannes, to really big acclaim and divisive reactions right after the fact. Because it's a musical about a trans war criminal, a literal cartel leader.
Yes.
Who ends up hiring what would be a lawyer in Zoe Saldaña, who comes in and helps them scope out the best surgeons to be able to transition, and then years later becomes the opposite of the cartel member, but the person trying to rescue all the people they hurt prior. I think there's a lot of fascinating stuff in there. Mm-hmm. I think the musical numbers are technically really good. I think this is another one of those movies where the performances, the technical aspects of it, and even elements of the story do give it, at bare minimum, like 2 stars of skill and talent, and you could still dislike 3 other stars of it. How have you felt about the reaction? Because I remember when you came out, before I saw it, you were telling me that you felt like some people are going to be on edge for this movie, some people are going to be offended.
Yeah.
Now that you've seen the reaction to it, do you feel it's as valid, or do you see it like The Substance, where you could tell, oh, you're bringing more stuff to the movie than what the movie's actually bringing?
I think there are some valid reactions to the film, and that's not to say that I necessarily share all those reactions, but I think there are ways to sort of look at the kind of callous approach to talking about a lot of pretty sensitive subjects, and particularly given like the bluntness with which they're delivered, because this is like almost like a telenovela style musical in the intense melodrama that they're displaying. It's just that it, like, I think they play it fast and loose with some of their commentary on these things, and I could see people being offended by how it's portrayed. I don't think that the movie is necessarily like mean-spirited or anything like that, but I don't necessarily begrudge some people's intense reactions to it. That all being said, like, I think that there's room for nuance in there too. And like, I don't think that like, just because some people interpret the way that the film is laid out one way means that you too have to feel those same negative feelings about it, right? Like, I think one of the things that's great about art is that we take our own experiences and use art as a mirror for them. And if Emilia Perez is leading people to really interesting and good takeaways, I don't want to begrudge them that. I think there's a lot of fascinating ideas here, but I do think that like it's just ultimately kind of sloppy, which is in a weird way also one of the features of a movie like this one, as outlandish as it is.
Well, that's my biggest takeaway from after I saw it and being prepped on like what it was all going to be about, a musical about drug dealers transitioning, that I don't get what's offensive of it, right? Because we're saying like some people have reactions to it. What? Because not liking the movie or finding it boring, I feel is not enough for people nowadays. They feel like I just didn't like the cinematography. That's not good enough. I didn't like the cinematography, and it awoke an oppressive thought that I had. So it's like it can't just be a critique of the movie anymore.
Totally.
What part of it gets into the offensive
that's
side?
The thing is, I think when we get to a stage when people are trying to have like an intense negative reaction to it, I do see a lot of people reverse engineering their criticisms. And that's something that is 100% the case for Emilia Perez. Like I see people talking about the way that the singing is recorded with a lot of live tracks or live singing recording as a knock against the film. It's like, that doesn't always work for me, but that is not necessarily the reason why Emilia Perez does or doesn't work, right? Like you gotta take the movie for what it is and not what you want the movie to represent.
Yes.
Yeah. I do think that some people have found issue with the way that the movie represents the idea of transitioning, because for a lot of people, being trans is not about being somebody new, but like opening up something that's been inside you, like being sharing a part of yourself that you've sort of left hidden. And I think this movie almost handles it like it's like a completely new person, like you're transitioning into a new brain, almost like that. And I think that's not necessarily like the message of the movie, but I can see why people would take away some negative responses to how it's handled.
One reaction I gave you, just to go off of that, I'm not a trans person, but as a Mexican person, you had told me, right? You're like, well, they kind of showcase every bad stereotype possible. It's like, yeah, but that's because we're in a cartel land. So, like, sure, there are several Latino stories you could tell. I understand this is one of them. I feel like with a lot of groups that are barely getting...
Sorry, you go first.
No, go for it.
A little hard to tell a story about Mexican cartels without Mexicans in it.
And cartels, I had said this too. They were, like, when we talked about Blue Beetle, and they're like, but why are they janitors? I was like, I agree. I want to see when we're rich too. But at the moment, I mean, we are also the janitors. I don't know what to tell you. Like, those things are going to happen. And I think there's a lot of times gatekeeping. This almost sort of like, it's not my story, so it's just mine. And I find that really weird because, there are several Latino stories. You should be able to sell all of them. For trans stories, it really sucks because we even saw it for one of the best movies of the year, which is the best way that I can compare it to this one. This one is not allowed to do anything with a trans story because it's a community that's very protective of their stories, that even when they got one of the best ones, Zachary Shevich, this year, and I saw the TV glow, people were overprotective. That's not how it went for me. Well, no, duh. Why would it go to you? Some of you transition this way, some of you transition the other way. Like, some of you are finding your own selves in your own ways, and those stories need to be told. I would hate it that you did that to somebody, finally got the funding to tell your story, and another moron like you said, that's not my story, it shouldn't be told. There is an actress in this who decided, not Zoe, who decided to come in, had a lot of input with the story.
Right.
Is a major character. We've been discussing whether they would be supporting or lead, considering they are the title character. Carla Sofia Gascon herself is a trans artist.
Right. So does her voice not matter in this situation or something like that?
I think there's a push and pull, right? Because you could also just say,
but I think this speaks. I think this speaks to a situation that we've talked about, and that was brought to a head by a documentary we recently recommended, Chasing Amy. Is that a lot of media exists in a place where it has the potential to be problematic, and perhaps like it is not the best representation of an idea or of a group of people. Yet at the same time, that piece of media can still be a force for good in some ways, can be something that some people view as representative in the way that Chasing Amy both has this positive and negative legacy. And I wonder if that's ultimately the case for a movie like Emilia Perez, where there will always be the people who are deeply offended by this movie. And then there will also be a section of people who feel really spoken to by this movie. There's a piece that's been going out in out.com by May Rude, who herself identifies as a trans Mexican American who was speaking in praise of this movie, right?
Really?
So yeah, so there's always going to be, like discourse and different opinions on it. I did see this one bit of criticism going around, and I'm curious what you thought about it as a person from, Spanish-speaking families, about about specifically Selena Gomez's character, because I believe, she is supposed to be a Mexican American. Like, I think she is born in America and moved to Mexico in the context of the story for this relationship. So she's not, like, within the context of the story, her Spanish isn't necessarily supposed to be perfect, yet there still are Spanish speakers I've seen who are criticizing, like, some of the word choice, some of the deliveries. Did you have any issues specifically with, like, how her character was presented, or just her ability to speak Spanish?
Her character was presented in the dumbest way possible, right? Like, if we're talking about just the story itself, if that's an ability that we could even do with a movie like Emilia Perez,
right?
Statistically speaking, this girl was not hitting her line. She would say a line in Spanish and then just go straight to English. It's like, why were you even talking that way to begin with? She is married to the main character when they're a cartel member. That person only speaks Spanish. They live in Mexico. I had heard that come up. Well, actually, she's supposed to be this. I'm like, damn, you Selena fans are working really hard. Let's just put it to you this way. Here is Selena herself saying, I did not get to practice enough, and it embarrasses me. Yeah, it's so apparent. I think the worst version of it, and it's always Netflix. On My Block had a character. That actress who ended up being like a big Trump supporter, turns out she was never even Mexican to begin with. She was like Middle Eastern or something, and she's been taking all these roles from Disney Channel up to On My Block. They had her say some line, and it went viral because of how bad it was. That is Selena for the entire runtime of this movie. Her character is also very weird because they're in this point of just being the lover who got thrown to the side. Because when Emilia transitions, like, they're dead. They really, like, don't exist anymore. The idea is that they found the body somewhere else. So I just found her character to just not be engaging, and it felt like a flat performance as well. In my opinion, just technically speaking. In terms of being offended, I mean, I don't know, we see this all the time. When you were talking about it, it's like the perspective that you bring into it is so fascinating, because to me, you were mentioning someone who really enjoyed the movie. And one of the things I thought, I was like, wow, we have not seen a Spanish musical with this much technical prowess and everything in a long time. Do I think it's the best? No, but I was like, people always talk about, hey, what's the first of this? Was it? They spent a lot of money in making these really big musical numbers, and a majority of the lyrics are in Spanish. Now, again, the critiques with it being a trans story as well, I don't know how much, getting into spoilers, is it not someone who is transitioning to be the person that they were? And how much people are looking at that and taking it as an excuse. Sometimes I feel like people will say something about a character up on screen, and I'm like, well, that wasn't what the character was doing, so is this how you feel? That someone is doing this to get away with something, or is it not their internal thing that they had? That is a discussion for the movie that we are not allowed to have, because I think people don't want pieces of art. They want a PSA that's telling them how to feel and everything. And that's not how that works.
Yeah, and ultimately I feel like didactic media tends to be the least interesting. So that is totally a point in Emilia Perez's favor for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I do think that there have been like a ton of interesting reactions, both positive and negative, to this film. I'm just
it's a weird movie.
I'm enjoying reading them.
Yeah, but let us know your thoughts down below, whether you liked it, whether you didn't. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a goofy cartel musical where they show off their weapons to see who's bigger than who's.
It's literally based on an opera. Like, it's not supposed to be necessarily like the most naturalistic storytelling.
But even if you end up hating it, please, please, please check out some of this guy's other movies, because A Prophet, I have been saying, is one of the best movies out there. If you really wanted a story of someone transitioning into something that they definitely were, Here you go. Sisters Brothers, I think you had shouted out as well. Paris, 13th District. A lot of really good ones. Make sure you check those out. Emilia Perez, out on Netflix. Let us know your thoughts on the accents, the musical numbers, all that good stuff down below.